Joined now by Cape Breton Eagles education coordinator Ryan MacPherson. And Ryan, this is a bit of a bittersweet interview for us to do. Usually you'd be my roommate on this long Quebec trip. How much is it kind of paining you that you don't get to do it this year?
I love this trip to Quebec a lot, actually. And not many people would say they love that kind of bus trip to Quebec up and back and hang around. But it's really a fun way to see the guys in a different environment other than in the class. You get to see them on the road, how they kind of enact in their regular everyday lives as a student athlete playing hockey. So it's a unique way to get to know the boys, especially post-trade deadline where there's some new players. It's also a good time in normal years to get to see some from parents and family in Quebec. So I really do miss it. I'm hoping brighter days are ahead for us and get back to reality next year and make the trip up with you guys.
One step at a time, I guess. The players get to go to Quebec, which they didn't last year. Of course, all conversations now dominated by the pandemic and COVID-19. Just how different was last year in your workspace and how different is this year from last year? I know that's kind of a general question, but walk us through some of the changes the last 2 years.
Last year was sort of the first kind of live fire exercises for us to try to figure out how to do it, how to have kids in school. And we had our high school guys in school last year, in-person classes, and we got along okay. It was sort of just day by day. I think this year we were really going pretty well there, and then things really changed fast. And the experiences of last year allowed us to kind of pivot quick this year. Last year sort of gave us a glimpse into how to do things a little differently. This year we were able to react fairly quickly and also, I think, bounce back quicker for us on the academic side. We had some backup plans in place and talked to our whole crew here on the ground with hockey ops and the education side of things and got it together enough where we were able to keep the guys going with minimal disruption. So long story short, every day is an adventure, but I think this year we're able to put the pieces together and communicate with other teams and the league as well to kind of come up with some solutions.
By the time people hear this, they may have read the article profiling you on the QMJHL website as part of Teacher Appreciation Week. Tell us a little bit about that for those that aren't familiar with it.
We normally honor our players that week, something we do in the last few years in Quebec, part of the Hooked on School Days campaign. But this year, I was contacted by the league to sort of offer up my 2 cents on basically what I do on a daily basis. And it's hard sometimes for teachers to get that appreciation. So that's always kind of the humble piece of where this is really nice. But at the same time, I'm just a small piece in a very large cog. I just kind of move around the chess pieces a little bit, but there's a whole whack of teachers out there who help us daily in high school, professors at university, tutors on the road. Our own crew here with Haley Blondin with our French language players, Gary McLean, who looks after our distance university players, and Cameron Clark, who has looked after European players for a very long time, helps them kind of get accustomed to not only the English language, but also the Cape Breton lifestyle. I'm just a small piece, so it's nice to get that appreciation, but I like to take the appreciation on for everybody who does help us throughout the year.
Certainly appreciate what you're doing here, and as well as all the other education coordinators around the QMJHL. Probably something we don't talk about enough. In addition to being a teacher and the education coordinator, you're a parent. Everybody knows of your famous daughter, Ella, that we're happy that she's doing well. And of course, your son, Boyd, is in school. So as somebody who has a child in school, you're probably a bit more familiar with the comings and goings this year. How much in-person activity has there been for Eagles players this year versus last year in terms of in-person schooling?
So in-person schooling-wise, our high school players go to class every day. We were just in the transition period to get our university guys back to Cape Breton University in class, which for some of them, ironically, would have been about first time in person in about 2.5 years. So when you really start to think about that, that's pretty wild. And just as we were doing that, Omicron wave kind of came in and we had to pivot a little bit. So they're in one class out there in person for the most part and then one virtual. And our French language guys go to school every day with Ely. And we meet our university guys a couple of sessions a week with Gary at the arena, the distance guys who are able to kind of just get follow up and get some help where needed and direct them the right way. So for the most part, the guys are doing in person some way or another. Some of it's more within the group, but some of it's more with, say, the quote unquote, the general population.
You are a billet father in addition to being education coordinator. Jacob Squires in his second year with the Eagles, but he gets his brother Cam coming along with him this year. I know you've been a billet for a long time, but how different has that been to have two brothers living with you?
Yeah, the brother Squires, it's a unique aspect. We've had guys here for the last little while, and generally, too, we've had guys from Quebec. Jake last year was our first person from Atlantic Canada, and then when Cam was selected, made the team in August. Took a little bit of renovations in the basement, but we were able to make it work and get Cam in here. But they've been great additions to the family. You mentioned Ella earlier. We're still always nervous, especially with everything going on with her, so that the boys have done exceptional work around her to be careful and integrate her in and treat her like their little sister. So, and the same with Boyd. It's a great thing if you're able to do it to sort of help your family environment, and to go along with the ride with both of them is unique. And like you said, having brothers, kind of special stuff there. You're the stats guy, but I look at, I don't know if it's a league record from brother. I don't know how long that went for, but be curious to see where that stands in the league record book.
Yeah, they had a lot of plays where they were setting each other up, and it's good to see. As you mentioned, if people don't know Ella's story, your daughter had the bone marrow transplant. Unique situation we've seen the last little while with the stoppage of CIS hockey. You see a lot of former Eagles players that you would have worked with going pro. What do you think's caused that? Or are you confident that these guys are still well taken care of with their education, the likes of Balmas, Gentile, and whatnot?
When they leave the queue, it doesn't stop the phone calls to me sometimes. So the last few weeks have been kind of busy, just asking for advice. And what's really nice to see is these players who are going to play, whether it's minor pro with the AHL or the ECHL, they still want to do school. I think that's important for the average person to hear is these guys still want to focus in on what they started to succeed with. They want to make sure they have a backup plan with school, and they're getting to experience their dream of playing at the pro level, but also want to make sure they finish off their education so that down the road they're able to lean on something. So those calls are always great to hear from former players, especially when that first time in their lives where they're playing professional level hockey. But it's also really comforting to hear that they still want to make sure they put the final dots on their I's, cross their T's to get their degrees. It's really cool to see, and that's kind of the long-term payoff of doing what I do, just to see that success.
Well, that is great to hear. That really kind of proves the worth that the Q puts an emphasis on education. It's nice to see the players following through with that even as they continue their pro hockey aspirations. Great insight as always, Ryan. I always enjoy having you on the broadcast. Best of luck with all the schooling this season.
Thanks, Patty. Great to talk to you, bud.
That's Eagles Education Coordinator Ryan MacPherson walking us through a variety of interesting topics this evening. You're listening to Uniglass Plus, Cape Breton Eagles Hockey, 1270 CJCB.